Sarah's no good in the kitchen, right? She can't even serve a decent meal at home. The room's cold glares suddenly turned towards me. Seeing me like that, Kevin got even more carried away and started boasting loudly. Your cooking is terrible. What? You've eaten my cooking? Aren't all your meals at your lover's place? What? I raised my voice and publicly accused Kevin of cheating. It's not a lie. I have proof right here. I pointed to the documents Ronald was holding. My name is Sarah, I'm 35. I've always found the aggressive pushiness of men intimidating, almost scary, resulting in few romantic relationships and little experience with men. As I approached my 40s, my parents grew concerned and started suggesting introductions. Initially, I refused, but with few opportunities to meet men and feeling pressured by my parents, I began to feel a rush towards marriage and went through a few introductions. One of them was Kevin. Kevin was kind, serious, and worked as an elite employee in a top company. He was big both in height and build, but strangely, I never felt intimidated by him. Our talks about marriage went smoothly, and I even had a family meeting with Kevin's parents. His family owns a restaurant, and his father is a famous chef. His dad, Ronald, is regarded as a major figure in the culinary world, known for being quiet and strict. I naturally straightened up when I met him. On the other hand, Kevin's mother, Michelle, was gentle, with a soft demeanor that formed dimples when she smiled. Kevin and I decided to get married. My parents were thrilled about me marrying into a wealthy family. The condition for our marriage was that I become a housewife, so I quit my clerical job at an electronics manufacturer. Even then, my coworkers teased me endlessly about marrying rich. Looking back, that was probably the peak of my happiness. Kevin told me he couldn't come home often because of his busy job, but asked me to bear with it for a while. He planned to achieve certain results at his current company before quitting to help with the family business. I decided to support Kevin because I believed it was good to take responsibility at work. Years into our marriage, he hardly ever came home. I knew he wouldn't be able to come home often, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. I found myself waiting alone in the living room of our condominium. This condominium was provided by Kevin's parents when we got married. He's not coming home again today. I decided to support him because I believed it was good to take responsibility at work. He hardly ever comes home, let alone regularly since we got married. He often travels for work, leaving the house empty for days. Dinners are almost always eaten out, and it's normal for Kevin to come home late. Despite coming home late, he leaves incredibly early in the morning. I worry if Kevin is getting enough sleep or eating properly. He often leaves for work without having breakfast. I once caught Kevin in the morning and asked him why he doesn't eat at home. He often travels for work, leaving the house empty for days. Kevin didn't even look at me as he tied his tie. It's okay. I'm just really busy with work right now. Don't worry about it, Sarah. With that, he would leave the house immediately. Even on weekends and holidays, he works from early morning till late at night, and often he's away on business trips. Initially, I thought Kevin was just being considerate by staying away from home. There was even a time when I thought it was cute, wondering if he was embarrassed. He didn't even look at me as he tied his tie. His belongings were minimal, only the bare necessities. Naturally, we hardly talked, so I knew nothing of his hobbies, likes, or dislikes. I wondered if it was my fault. I talked to my parents about it, but they said it's good for a man to be busy with work, not taking my concerns seriously. My few friends also think it's better for husbands to earn outside and not be at home. They even envy me, showing no concern for my worries. Kevin holds the purse strings, but he ensures the monthly living expenses are provided for, so there's no financial insecurity. This lack of insecurity, however, makes me anxious in reverse. I often blame myself, wondering if I did something to make him dislike me. I think about whether there's something wrong with me as a wife, meticulously cleaning and studying cooking to prepare delicious meals every day. Kevin tries to dispel my worries in the little time he has, seeing my anxious face. "Sarah, you're doing just fine." I had convinced myself this was just another form of marriage, but then I got scolded by Ronald recently. I received a call from Ronald at the end of the year. I thought it unusual to get a call from Ronald, but then he yelled so suddenly that I dropped the phone. "Sarah, what kind of nerve do you have? Did something happen? Don't play dumb. Why haven't you been attending the family gatherings? Year after year." I had never heard about these family gatherings before. I had discussed the Christmas party with Kevin before, and he told me the family doesn't gather because culinary people meet up for Christmas. He also said that when relatives do gather, the numbers become too large to manage. Usually, he goes to his parents' house with presents alone. "First of all, if you're not attending this year, shouldn't you at least apologize for being unable to attend?" Ronald's stern voice made me freeze. It's been a Christmas tradition for me to stay home while he visits his parents alone. I've been careful with presents and messages, trying not to be rude. I had suggested calling at least, but Kevin said Christmas is incredibly busy, and I thought that must be true for someone prominent in the culinary world. But I was also afraid of meeting the intimidating Ronald. According to Ronald, the family gathers on December 24th for a party, and culinary people meet on December 25th. I could only apologize over the phone. He just berated me before hanging up. After the call, my mind was filled with questions. What did he mean by "Sarah doesn't need to come"? Why did he lie about there being no family gatherings? Did he go so far to prevent me from attending? That night, when the date changed, Kevin came home. Thinking it was now or never, I bravely asked him about the Christmas party. "Today, I got a call from Ronald. He scolded me for not attending the Christmas party." Kevin sighed and answered reluctantly. "Going to a gathering with so many people can be intimidating. Plus, many wives dislike visiting their husband's family home. That's why I thought I was being considerate." I was astonished by his misguided attempt at being considerate. Indeed, many people dislike visiting their spouse's family home. My friends also complained about not wanting to go. However, never going at all seemed absurd. Despite Kevin's reluctance, I insisted on attending the gathering. The Christmas party with Kevin's relatives was grand. A large number of relatives gathered, exchanging greetings. "So you finally showed up. Your family, after all. It's only natural to show your face here." Ronald threw harsh words at me. Even after I explained that Kevin said there were no family gatherings, Ronald remained furious. "You must have been avoiding us because you didn't want to meet." Overwhelmed by his anger, I gave up on arguing. The rest of the family also gave me cold looks. I supposed it couldn't be helped. I decided to endure it. What I couldn't bear, however, was Kevin's lack of support. Instead, he just quietly drank his alcohol. As everyone drank more, they started coming over to me to complain. "Kevin's always saying he's never seen you do any housework." In my heart, I whispered, because Kevin hardly ever comes home. "You probably always eat out because you rarely cook and it's not tasty when you do." The words coming from the relatives were all unfamiliar to me. What has Kevin been telling them? I couldn't understand why he was disparaging me. "I'm sorry. I'll be more careful from now on." Faced with their harsh words, all I could do was stiffen up and apologize. I endured the painful situation, helping in the kitchen and serving drinks. After somehow finishing the greetings with the relatives and culinary professionals, I returned home exhausted. Kevin said he was going to work from his parents' house and left separately, just like when we arrived. Reflecting on it, everything seemed odd. In my heart, I whispered, because he hardly ever comes home. And why was he spreading that I'm a terrible wife who doesn't do housework? Is there a connection between him not coming home and these stories? Once I started worrying, I couldn't stop. Fortunately, I had plenty of time. I decided to follow Kevin's actions. Like detectives in movies often say, tailing. I followed Kevin early in the morning as he hurriedly left. Knowing his company, I had no trouble tailing him there. Feeling a bit like a detective excited me. It felt more fulfilling than spending the day doing nothing at home. I killed time in cafes and restaurants near his company, then followed Kevin when he went out. He returned to the company in the evening without any suspicious behavior. Continuing to watch from a cafe, Kevin left around 7 p.m. Perhaps he finished work unusually early today. If he went straight home, he would find out I had been out. I hurried home. Managing to get home before him, I rushed to prepare dinner and waited for him. However, he didn't return until after midnight. Feeling something was off, I decided to tail Kevin the next day too. Kevin's routine from morning to evening was the same: go to the company, leave for a bit, and return in the evening. The question was what happened after. Watching from a different restaurant, I saw him leaving the company around 6 p.m. Today, I decided to follow him directly. Instead of heading to the station to go home, he started walking in a different direction. I hesitated for a moment before continuing to follow. He walked towards a street with motels. Determined, I followed but eventually lost sight of him. As I was looking around, Kevin suddenly appeared in front of me. Both of us were surprised, staring at each other. He was the first to speak. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I couldn't come up with a good excuse and stammered. "To think you're here, what have you been doing all day?" I was shocked. It was Kevin who should be under suspicion. Yet, I was the one being made to look suspicious. "Anyway, go home. We'll talk there." Embarrassed to be scolded by him in such a place, I hurried home. When Kevin came home late at night, he confronted me with something outrageous. "Thinking you're bored at home, you tail your husband? Why should I support someone like that?" I tried to object, albeit weakly. "I do take care of the house. Don't say you're doing housework just because you cleaned a bit. From now on, manage with $100 for living expenses." I was speechless. How was I supposed to live on $100? "The utility bills will be deducted from my account. And you won't have to spend on my food." Kevin smirked maliciously. "Then, at least let me work. Let me take a part-time job." Embarrassed to be scolded by him in such a place, I hurried home. No, work full-time like me. And don't slack off on the housework. Despite my objections, Kevin was adamant. Eventually, I had to return to my previous job at the electronics manufacturer to comply with his demands. I ended up doing all the housework while working. Suddenly, my life became incredibly busy. I couldn't play detective anymore, caught between work and housework. Since then, Kevin has been constantly finding fault with me, complaining about the housework. In the short time we see each other in the morning, he complains about dirty windows, dust in the entrance, or Uniron shirts before leaving. I have to do all these chores at night because I work too. As time went on, December arrived, and the Christmas party approached. Kevin, as usual, told me not to attend. "You stay at home. You don't need to come to the gathering." Arguing seemed pointless, so I remained silent. He left with a memorable remark. "I can't show someone like you in front of my relatives. It would be embarrassing." I was shocked by these harsh words. How could Kevin say such a thing? To say this to me, who works from morning till night and does all the housework. Anyway, I decided to attend the Christmas party without telling Kevin. And then, I had to make Ronald and Michelle understand the real him. I tightly gripped the thick envelope that had arrived earlier. On the day of the Christmas party, I went to Kevin's family home to participate. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Seeing me suddenly appear at the Christmas party, Kevin was surprised but, given the situation, could only glare at me without saying anything. The relatives' gaze towards me was as cold as ever. They whispered criticisms about me to each other. It was clear they were all being deceived by my husband. I didn't let it bother me. While enduring the cold stares, I stood in the kitchen, preparing and serving food and drinks. After a while, perhaps as the alcohol started to take effect, he began to loudly voice his criticisms of me. "Sarah's useless even when she's in the kitchen. She can't even provide a decent meal at home." All the cold glares turned towards me at once. Seeing me like that, Kevin got even more carried away and started boasting loudly. "Her cooking is terrible." Ronald's stern gaze turned towards me. "What's the meaning of this? Are you not suitable to be Kevin's wife?" As Ronald raised his voice, all the relatives' gazes turned towards me. Just when everyone thought Ronald was about to start lecturing, I stood in front of Kevin and began to argue back. "What? Have you ever eaten my cooking? Aren't all your meals at your lover's place? What?" Ronald, caught off guard, was left with his mouth half open. "What are you starting now?" While everyone was in shock, only Kevin began to frantically make excuses. "Sarah, why tell such lies just because you're being spoken ill of?" Kevin turned back to Ronald, starting to make excuses. "Dad, I don't have a lover." "Is that so?" Ronald seemed to want to believe him. He nodded more at his words than mine. Thinking he had regained Ronald's trust, Kevin began to retort with confidence. "Stop talking nonsense. You're really out of your mind." I didn't just blurt out that Kevin had a lover on a whim. I took an envelope out of my bag and showed the documents inside to Ronald and others. Kevin kept harshly criticizing me without concern. "Hey, apologize now. Then I'll forgive you for lying." The relatives probably believed Kevin didn't have a lover. They sent me harsh glares. Ronald and Michelle were earnestly reading the documents. The documents I handed over were the results of an investigation into Kevin's cheating. Because his actions were clearly suspicious, I had a detective agency take over and investigate thoroughly. The results from the detective agency confirmed Kevin was indeed guilty. The reason Kevin hadn't been coming home was because he was meeting with his lover. Most of his time was spent at his lover's house, sometimes even using motels, according to the report. He has always been eating at his lover's place. While I managed the living expenses with $100, worked full-time, and took care of all the household chores, he was enjoying his time with his lover. When I encountered him on the street with the motels, he was about to have a secret meeting with his lover in a motel. I raised my voice and publicly accused Kevin of cheating. "It's not a lie. I have the evidence right here." I pointed to the documents Ronald was holding. "The condominium Kevin enters isn't ours." Voices of skepticism rose from the relatives. "Is that true, Kevin? What does this mean? Is it fabricated?" Ronald and Michelle were poring over the documents as if trying to bore holes through them. "Kevin, is this true?" Kevin, with sweat on his forehead, desperately denied it. "No, that can't be. I don't have a lover." Ronald and Michelle were engrossed in the photos. Photos of Kevin holding hands with an unfamiliar woman and entering an unfamiliar condominium. Photos of them choosing jewelry together in a jewelry store. Photos of them drinking wine at a stylish restaurant. Photos of them selecting groceries at a supermarket. In all of them, Kevin's careless smile is captured. I pressed him relentlessly. "Kevin, you said you were busy with overtime every day, right?" Kevin turned red and fell silent. My anger made me speak faster. "Why did you lie about not wanting to meet the relatives or about the cooking not being tasty?" "I didn't tell such lies." Even at this point, he pretended not to know. This attitude deeply disappointed me. Everyone fell silent at the exchange between Kevin and me. Then, Michelle's loud voice filled the room. "Kevin! What are you doing?" Kevin was taken aback by Michelle's loud voice. "It's not like that." Michelle, unlike her usual gentle demeanor, had her eyes narrowed in intense anger. Even I, who wasn't being scolded, became frightened. "What's different? Are you saying all this is fabricated?" Despite speaking calmly now, Michelle's tone was even more intimidating. The relatives, too, were silenced by Michelle's fervor. "The stuff about Sarah was all lies you told. Now explain yourself properly." I've never seen Michelle angry, she's always smiling, but she's scariest when she's angry, the relatives whispered among themselves. Kevin, as if resigning himself, curled up and began to speak softly about the truth. "That woman, I'd been seeing her since before we were married, met her at a bar." The relatives started murmuring. Ronald and Michelle were staring at him with stern faces. "I thought this family would never accept a woman from a bar as a wife." Was Kevin crying? There were wet spots on the floor. "So, I thought I'd just marry any suitable woman and live with her at her place." "So, that suitable woman was me." Kevin apologized. "I'm sorry. You said you weren't interested in marriage, and I thought it would work out if I just provided money." Then, a question came to my mind. "Then why did you speak ill of me to Ronald and Michelle?" Without those bad words, I wouldn't have been so suspicious. "I wanted her to be my real wife. I hated the idea of living with Sarah, who I don't even like. So, I wanted to divorce with you somehow." "Do you realize how selfish you're being?" Kevin seemed to shrink even smaller. "I'm sorry. I was constantly told I wouldn't be considered a grown man until I got married, so I thought I just had to get married. And I thought once I was married, even if I got divorced, they wouldn't bother me about it anymore." He assumed that once he was divorced, his parents wouldn't meddle in his remarriage. That way, he could focus on his relationship with his lover. All he needed was a pretext for divorce. It had to appear as though the fault lay with me, not him. That's why he had been speaking ill of me, trying to tarnish my reputation. Reducing the living expenses to $100 was because he didn't want me investigating his affair. If he only gave me $100, I wouldn't be able to afford an investigation, and working full-time would leave me no time to snoop. He hadn't anticipated that I would use a detective agency. Such short-sightedness led to Kevin having to apologize in front of the family. "Infidelity is the one thing you should never do. You betrayed Sarah, who has done so much for you." Michelle's forehead was throbbing with veins. Her anger showed no signs of abating. Kevin was crying and sniffling. "Kevin, you are a disgrace to our family. We disown you." The gathered relatives gasped. Probably, Michelle's word was absolute. Ronald nodded deeply in agreement. Kevin no longer had a place in this home. Exposed for his infidelity and lies in front of all the relatives, and further told by his own mother to sever ties, stood up shakily, wiped his tears, and left the room without a word. After Kevin left, Michelle came to me, apologized while holding my hand. Sarah, I'm so sorry for the terrible things Kevin did. Ronald apologized as well. I'm truly sorry. You're free to divorce him. Michelle continued to hold my hand with tears in her voice. I can't believe Kevin turned out like this. We were completely deceived as well. I'm so sorry for yelling at you over things that weren't true, Sarah. I had thought Ronald was a silent, always angry, stubborn person, but he quickly admitted his mistake and apologized, proving to be a good person. And it was clear that this home was held together by Michelle. Exposed for his infidelity and lies in front of all the relatives, and further told by his own mother to sever ties, he stood up shakily, wiped his tears, and left the room without a word. I reconciled with Ronald and Michelle. Soon after, my divorce from Kevin was finalized. In a way, the divorce was what he wanted. Disowned by his family for his affair, Kevin, without the support of his prestigious family, fell off the career track and worked in a lower position, humbled. Kevin's income significantly decreased, and he was dumped by his mistress, who had grown tired of him. I learned about these developments from Michelle at Kevin's family home. I received compensation from Kevin and his mistress. Especially from Kevin's family, I received an amount more than double the usual rate, probably including a request for discretion. With financial security, I now indulge in luxuries like overseas travel several times a year. I decided to continue living in the condominium prepared for our new home, as I liked, until I no longer preferred it. Since Kevin was hardly ever there, it felt free of his presence, and I lived comfortably. The one good thing that came out of his actions was returning to work. Being coerced back into employment by him, I now had an income and no worries about future living expenses. I occasionally keep in touch with Ronald and Michelle. I'm invited to the Christmas parties, but I decline that. Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you. Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call. Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend. With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear. Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell. Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed. "Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts." One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said, "Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?" He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine. Don't say that. Family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly. My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued. "Look," he continued. "Enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers." Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced. "I thought as much." He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance. "Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable." Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. "Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction." Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. after being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room. "Thank you so much," she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom. "Where's the bathroom? May I use it?" I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably. "Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it?" Followed by his words, "Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you." Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me. "We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted." There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay. Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now. I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much. "Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary." Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave. "And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it." Even though she demanded us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it. "Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right? Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome." Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion, likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said, "This is going to be interesting." He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson. "Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?" It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out. "What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now." Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him. "What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand." Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved. "What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility." Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson. "This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment." Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him. "Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it," he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him. "We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now?" "That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me." Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily. "Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly." As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all. "Emily, we're not at that house anymore." Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, we had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's. "What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address." She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family, and inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit. Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance. We've disowned you, remember? We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family? I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed. "What?" she exclaimed in a loud voice. "What? I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right?" Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued. "How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family." And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that? "Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up." "No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us!" When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us.
My name is Kayla. I'm a 34-year-old housewife who has become a hunter of sorts, diligently working on pest control at our countryside home every year, as even slight changes in the climate cause an increase in insects. In the past, I could easily say things like, "Bugs are so scary, gross," without any shame, but now that I'm over 30, I'm emotionlessly swatting them left and right. I've become quite tough, haven't I? Today, I want to share a story about how I dealt with my sister who had a crush on my husband. This happened a few years ago when I was still in my 20s. My middle school class was having a reunion, and I ran into my childhood friend, James, who used to live nearby. Back when we first started elementary school, my sister Victoria, who is 2 years younger than me, James, and I used to play together all the time. But gradually, the boyish emotion of, "It's embarrassing to play with girls," grew stronger, and James ended up distancing himself from us. In middle school, James's family moved away, and we grew even more distant. That's why I was so nervous when I talked to him at the reunion. But as adults, We have a strong ally. Yes, it's alcohol. Oh, how I love you, alcohol. With the power of alcohol, James and I had a lively conversation, as if we hadn't been apart for so long. We went to the second and third parties, just the two of us, and right before we were about to part ways, James said, "I used to like you when we were kids, and it seems like I still like you, even as an adult." I responded, "What's that all about?" And we started dating with a lighthearted exchange like, "So, shall we date?" Later, a sober James said, "Who do I think I am?" while rolling around on the floor questioning himself. Needless to say, I laughed out loud at the sight. It's kind of funny when the person you like is incredibly embarrassed, and the cause of it is you. I feel a little bit bad for him, though. Then, our marriage was decided smoothly, and we went to each other's parents' houses to announce our upcoming wedding and the start of our cohabitation, which was scheduled for half a year later. We planned to live together before getting married to make sure our lifestyles were compatible. Since we were childhood friends, our parents knew each other's faces. No problem there. Easily approved. We should have gotten permission easily, but, of all things, a problem occurred at my house. It happened when James came over to greet my family, and we were having dinner together. "I'm home," my sister returned from work with a deflated voice. She saw James sitting at the table, and after being surprised, her expression quickly changed to a happy one. "Huh, James, why are you at our house?" James looked a bit embarrassed and glanced at me. "Well, we've actually been dating for about half a year now, and we decided to get married. He came over today to announce it. I thought I should tell my family myself, so I explained the situation to my sister on behalf of James." The moment I told her, my sister's face turned sour, as if she had bitten into a bitter bug. "All right. I'm tired, so I'm going to bed. Bye." With that, she hurriedly went into her room and slammed the door shut. Wow, that was unpleasant. I looked at James, worried that I might have upset her. But he gave me a reassuring smile and said, "Don't worry about it. Just to clarify, my sister isn't usually like that. There must have been something about my upcoming marriage or cohabitation that bothered her. But even our parents had no issues with it, so why was my sister so upset?" Not understanding her feelings, I wondered whether I should directly ask her after James had left. When I was about to take a bath, I ran into her in the hallway. I stumbled over my words as she glared at me with a fierce expression. "I never thought you'd marry James. I've always loved him, too. I'll never forgive you." With those furious words, she stormed off, her footsteps echoing angrily down the hallway. Her unexpected confession left me stunned. Really? She loved James too? I couldn't help but feel like this was something out of a daytime drama. I spent a sleepless night thinking about it, but eventually reached a conclusion. Did it really matter if my sister loved my fiancé? After all, we were already engaged. If James had said he loved my sister, it would have been a different story. But that wasn't the case. More importantly, if she had loved him since they were kids, she should have told him her feelings much earlier. It was her own fault for not doing so, and blaming me for it was misguided. I knew she might become more hostile, but I decided to let it slide, like a big-hearted older sister. Normally, this would be a heavy situation, but I chose to take a more optimistic view. Still, I was unsure whether to tell James about it. My sister's feelings could become known to him, but if I didn't tell him, he'd feel uncomfortable every time he came over without knowing why. So considering him as a party involved, I decided to tell him everything.
"If there's anything I can do, let me know. It doesn't seem like there's much I can do, though,"
James said, concerned about me. "Well, it's a sisterly issue. If my sister tries to attack me, I might ask you to be my shield."
"Hey, don't joke about that."
So that's how we decided not to think too deeply about it. Neither of us had any intention of changing our decision to marry, and it wasn't an issue we could convince my sister to understand. So, our choice was to leave it be. As expected, my sister's attitude toward me became much colder after that. On the first day, when I went to take a bath after her, I found that she had drained the bathtub. Ha ha ha! This isn't a big deal. There's always the shower. Honestly, I can even joke about my sister's petty attempts at annoying me. However, it was a bit much when she hid my makeup and wallet before work. I don't have time for a treasure hunt in the morning. I desperately searched, trembling at the thought of being late. Thanks to being late for work, twice in 1 week, I barely made it in, and my boss looked at me with cold eyes and said,
"Is it because you're getting relaxed now that you're getting married?"
Unforgivable. But no, I'm her older sister. I should forgive her. Or should I? Our parents were initially unaware of my sister's antics, but eventually they noticed something was off when she started hiding valuables. My mom scolded her, saying, "Why are you acting so childish?" Well, it seems like the person herself probably didn't think much of it and just thought, "What a pain." But the problem was our dad. Dad had always favored my sister because he had to care for her as a baby when Mom fell ill. There was a tendency for him to dote on and have a preference for his younger daughter over me. Basically, he has developed a motherly instinct due to his experience with child rearing. I wouldn't say that I don't understand his feelings. I have the same feelings because I also grew up thinking of my younger sister, who went through tough times, as cute. If you're talking about an experience where I was compared to my younger sister and came up short, yes, that's right. The only time I felt my sister was favored over me was when Dad chose to go to the aquarium instead of the amusement park as I wanted. My mother was someone who would ask me if I wanted to go to the amusement park, so I don't have any painful memories of feeling inferior because of my father's preference for my younger sister. But if my mother had not been that kind of person, I would have felt a strong sense of inferiority. And to make matters worse, my friends at the time would say things like, "Your younger sister is more loved." So I just thought that there was some imbalance of affection everywhere. Well, maybe it's just my naturally optimistic personality. If there's someone who can bring me down, I'd like to see them try. Or something like that. But this time, Dad sided with my sister. It seems that she was talking about how my older sister took my boyfriend. In my father's mind, he already thought of him as the worst man who played around with both sisters. My sister can get married, but I couldn't help but wonder what would happen to my abandoned little sister. I couldn't blame him for taking sides. Regarding Dad's opinion, Mom said, "James doesn't seem like the type who can do such a thing." And with a half-convinced expression, she also listened to my opinion. No, that's not it. On top of that, Mom didn't take either my or my sister's words at face value, and she fairly assessed the situation. But Dad said,
"I can't stand how pitiful the abandoned sister is, and now even the older sister is being toyed with. I won't forgive anyone for taking advantage of my beloved daughters. You need to wake up, too."
He spoke as if I'd been brainwashed by James. No matter what I say, he won't listen. Despite some difference in affection, he's a good father who truly loves my sister and me from the bottom of his heart. However, just this once, I wish he would listen a bit more to what I have to say. While it was quite troublesome that my marriage was being opposed, I decided to push through and make it happen anyway. In short, I decided to move out and live with James sooner than planned. The idea was to distance myself from my sister and her issues. If I wasn't at home, she couldn't bother me. The problem would be solved. In fact, this decision seemed to be the right one as our life together went smoothly. As the days went by, my mom told me, I think you're probably right. And since you're an adult, do as you please. Live freely. My dad seemed unhappy, but didn't say anything. Maybe he thought that even if James and I broke up, it wouldn't be good for me or my sister. He probably believed this was the best way to settle things. I think I believed it was the best way to settle things smoothly. However, it's heartbreaking to see James being treated like such a villain. But there was no news from my sister. I thought everything was over. Then came the wedding day. My sister didn't attend, and my father urged me to reconsider the marriage, saying,
"It's not too late."
My mother laughed and said, "I've had moments when I thought I made a mistake marrying your dad, too. So be prepared for various things in marriage." Needless to say, Dad turned pale behind me, exclaiming,
"Is that true?"
Not everyone had heartfelt blessings, but with our parents watching over us, we got married. The next day, our doorbell rang loudly. What? James and I jumped up. We rushed to the monitor and saw my entire family visiting. Dad? Mom? Victoria? What's going on? My sister glared at me with sharp eyes. I didn't say anything before, but I'm pregnant with James's baby. Take responsibility. My dad added.
You don't have children yet, so James should take responsibility. Break up with you and marry Victoria. Give James to her.
While listening to my sister and father's side of the story with a puzzled look, Mom asked me, "What's going on?" James, still half asleep, came to the door behind me.
Huh? What? My baby? Huh?
Finally waking up, James shook his head vigorously at me.
It's not true. We didn't do anything like that.
His denial was comically exaggerated. I knew that. In fact, his panic made it even more suspicious. So he should stop. I wanted to laugh, but I kept quiet. What do you mean, James's baby? How many months are you? 2 months. If James doesn't take responsibility, this child will be fatherless. That's so sad, right? 2 months? I exchanged glances with James, startled by my sister's story. James and I burst into laughter. My confused parents didn't know what was going on. My sister was flustered, yelling, "What are you laughing at?" I wiped tears from my eyes, laughing too much, and said, "Well, I see. So it was 2 months ago, huh?" I started tearing up from laughing too hard.
Victoria, we had fun last time, didn't we?
Huh? Oh, yeah. My sister panicked for a moment at James's sudden question. My parents didn't understand what James meant and glared at him with disgust. I was probably the only one who knew what he was trying to do.
By the way, Victoria, how many abs do I have?
What? Pfft. My sister was dumbfounded. I almost burst out laughing.
Do you remember the number of my abs you saw 2 months ago? I accidentally lost them recently.
Only James would describe his abs as if he'd lost something. I laughed so much I felt like my abs were popping out. What are you talking about, James?
The correct answer is 0.
I almost said, I know, but James confessed without paying attention to my sister's puzzled face over the fact that he didn't have any abdominal muscles. Even my mom couldn't help but laugh. Maybe whoever made the other person laugh would win this battle.
Question 2. You've seen my moles, right? How many are there in total?
Huh? No. What? My sister seemed confused about how to react to James's strange questions. It made sense. His goal was to confuse her and have fun with her. They never had physical contact, so she couldn't answer James's questions. If she slipped up, it would be funny, and he would play along. He kept asking questions instead of quickly denying it, enjoying the fact she couldn't answer. In fact, my mom started to feel something was off, wondering, isn't it strange for them to be this close? Of course, this kind of exchange wouldn't happen if they had really spent the night together, especially in front of our parents. Just having this conversation proved nothing happened. James was enjoying his own way of getting back at my sister, confusing her. He was so happy, like a child with a new toy, and had a very innocent expression on his face. What a scary guy. If she can't deal with this kind of joke, she can't be James's wife. And I watched my sister's reaction. She finally answered question 2 with desperation. 10, maybe?
Bzzz, wrong. The correct answer is, I don't know either.
My dad burst out laughing too. At the same time, he tried to hide his frustration.
Enough, James. Stop messing around after leading on my daughters.
I stopped my dad, who looked like he was about to grab James. Wait, listen. You said she's 2 months pregnant, right? If you think about when she got pregnant, it's impossible for James to be the father. Wait, what do you mean? My words caught my mom's attention. Can I say it? As I glanced at James, he reluctantly nodded, making a displeased face.
No, wait a moment. Can I say it?
Can you?
Yeah, I can.
Trying to be tough, James puffed out his chest.
Well, father-in-law, mother-in-law, the truth is, during that time, I was stung by a bee on my, important male part.
At that moment, everyone, even my sister, burst out laughing.
Enough with the lies. There's no way you'd be stung there.
My angry father and my mother laughing hysterically while clapping their hands.
Well, it's embarrassing, but it's true. It was hot, so I thought I'd cool down a bit. I opened the window, thinking no one could see me, and just relaxed, naked. And then, that bee came flying in and stung me.
James's face, even his ears, turned bright red. I tried not to laugh for his sake, but I couldn't help but burst out laughing.
There's no way such an embarrassing guy exists.
No,
there's really such an embarrassing guy right here.
James tried to argue against my father's words, but it wasn't something to be proud of. That doesn't prove the baby in my belly isn't James's. My sister, who had nearly lost her footing, seemed to have caught her breath and rejoined the battle.
No, Victoria, think about it. A bee stung me on the important part. Dad, you can imagine the pain of having that vital area hurt, right?
My sister fell silent at James's serious face. My dad, who'd been imagining the situation, looked down while gently holding his crotch. He tried to make a stern face, but it was clear he was starting to believe James's words.
It's a really important, delicate area for men, so it was tough, I even called an ambulance.
I was more embarrassed to be the one who sympathized. I couldn't help but retort at James's story.
I had a fever and it was terrible. If someone made a baby in that condition, they'd have real extreme tastes. I could even ask the hospital that took care of me.
My mom burst into laughter at James's quiet words. James, you used to take off your swimsuit when playing in our plastic pool, didn't you? Come on, show me the place where you were stung. Laughing loudly, my mom approached James with her hands rubbing together.
What? It's already healed, so there's no evidence here. Why would I show you something like that?
For some reason, he tried to hide his chest area that wasn't important and unrelated and escape from my mother's grasp. From the looks of it, my mom seemed to trust him now. I felt relieved. James, on the other hand, didn't seem to feel relieved in that.
Well, yeah, I can sympathize with that as a man. I don't think anyone would make up such an embarrassing lie, and there's no need to check with the hospital.
At that moment, my dad had kind eyes, as if he were respecting James's last shred of pride. I saw an expression I've never seen before. Ironically, because of where the sting was, understanding from living together seemed quick. I wonder if this also applies to the benefits of injury. Amidst all this, I said to my sister, who stood there in a daze, "Look, even if you tell such a pointless lie, neither James nor I will get a divorce. If anything, I think you'll just become more and more miserable. I may not be able to make you believe me, but I really want you to be happy. You're my one and only sister." At that moment, my sister's eyes widened in anger. "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! I've had enough. I don't like James anymore if he's on my sister's side." James forcefully shook off my sister's hand as she became emotional and tried to grab me.
"It's fine if you don't like me. I love Kayla, so it doesn't matter. I think of Victoria as a precious childhood friend and a sister-in-law, but I will never see her as a lover now or in the future. If you keep repeating lies like this, I will stand up against them with all my strength. I am Kayla's husband, so I will protect her with all my might."
I almost started to cry. He didn't look like the idiot who had been stung by a bee and was saying some mysterious nonsense like,
"I might be done for. The world is my enemy."
"My husband is so cool." I even thought that. My father, seeing the situation, said,
"Victoria, if you are really pregnant, show us some evidence, like a medical history."
Hearing this line, it became clear that my parents had believed Victoria's pregnancy based solely on her words without any proof. I love my parents for believing and not doubting what their child says, but this time it seems their kindness has backfired. My mother also urged my sister, "If it's a lie, apologize to both of them." My sister bit her lip and trembled. "Enough. No one is on my side. I don't care, and I don't regret it." My sister said that, tears in her eyes, and left the scene. My father tried to follow her, but my mother stopped him, saying leave her be, let her cool off. 2 weeks later, my mother forcibly took my sister, who still insisted she was pregnant, to the obstetrician and gynecologist. As expected, there were no signs of pregnancy. She was diagnosed as a healthy adult woman with no signs of illness. My father and mother apologized to James, saying,
"We're sorry for the trouble and for doubting you without any reason."
"We should have trusted you, James, who we'd known since childhood."
"Please, take care of Kayla."
They also bowed their heads to me, saying,
"We're really sorry for causing you such discomfort."
Honestly, I don't think my parents are to blame, since I hadn't told them about my deteriorating relationship with my sister. Having parents who believe and don't doubt their child, well, there may be various things to think about from a societal perspective, but it's true that they stand up for their daughter. After all, there is no substitute. They are my one and only precious parents. Everyone makes mistakes, big or small. It's ironic that this time the mistake involved my parents, or more precisely, my father. I've suffered from his favoritism towards my sister before, but I'll forgive him because he raised me so well. After all, without these parents, I wouldn't have grown up so happy, or met James. My sister, embarrassed by her pregnancy lie being exposed, angrily left the house saying, "I don't want to live in a place like this." Before, my father, who was always soft on her, would have gone to fetch her, but this time he said,
"It's better for Victoria to cool off and not come home."
My mother said, "You can't just brush it off as a runaway romance. If she can't apologize sincerely when she comes back, she won't be allowed in the house." I can't imagine my enraged sister sincerely apologizing to us. My mother probably thinks the same. In other words, this was essentially disowning her. 7 years have passed since then. My sister apologized to my parents and us, and returned home once. But in the end, she was really disowned and kicked out. At first, she seemed to behave well, but she caused trouble at the end of the year after drinking heavily. She sneaked into James's bed, who had gone to sleep before her, and asked, "Aren't you getting tired of my sister by now?" James seemed to think a ghost had appeared and let out a loud scream.
Ah!
It was so loud, it seemed like the neighbors would get angry. My parents and I woke up from the noise, and the incident was exposed. The suspect, my sister, was quite drunk and said, "It's not fair that you're always so close with my sister. You should share some of that with me too." Of course, that's not something we could do, nor would we. I was furious and told her to stop it. James was trembling like a chihuahua, and my parents, with an expression like they'd never seen before, disowned my sister. I'll never forget how my father, who was supposed to be fond of my sister, showed his disgust by saying,
"I don't remember raising a child who would attack a man in his sleep."
My sister apologized over and over again after sobering up, but my father strongly rejected her, saying,
"Actions taken when drunk reveal one's true feelings. We can't trust you anymore."
My sister left home in tears. Meanwhile, I found out I was pregnant for the first time after the tumultuous end of the year. Since then, I've been with James, and we just kept having children constantly, you know. Now, at 34 years old, I'm a mother of 4 children, although 2 of them are twins, so I've only experienced childbirth 3 times. They're almost all a year apart, so every day is like a festival. If left alone, the walls would be covered with crayon scribbles, as if it's an art exhibit. On Sunday mornings, James and I would run around the house with a cleaner in hand, trying to clean it up. Even though we clean it up, it gets scribbled on again. But despite the chaos, these are happy days. The youngest child is going through a bit of a no phase, resisting clothes, brushing teeth, and using the toilet. But when I see the sleeping faces of my 4 little angels, I can forgive anything. My parents also seem to share my feelings, and they frequently visit our home to help with childcare. James is also very cooperative with childcare, although his hair is constantly being pulled, and now he's worried about his thinning hair. The expression seems to say just that, as they respond accordingly. I won't say, "It's okay if you lose hair with your promotion and increased salary. You can afford good hair growth treatments now." I'll just keep that to myself. It seems interesting to see James troubled by thinning hair. For better or worse, we want to see all sorts of sides of the people we love, right? Although it's far from a calm and peaceful home, it's a lively and even noisy place, but right now, I'm very happy.
Your baby is adorable.
Yeah, he looks just like you.
Huh?
Huh? Ever since we were kids, my sister was somewhat of a local beauty known around town. I was a sporty kid, always running around the playground with the boys, sporting a short haircut. In contrast, Emma was a delicate girl, fair-skinned, and looked lovely in white dresses. That's why all the boyfriends I brought home during my student days ended up falling for her. It wasn't her fault. I blamed my lack of charm, but continued to work on myself until I finally secured a marriage. My husband Mark didn't even bat an eyelid upon seeing my sister. That's why I thought he was the right one. I trusted him. But his betrayal was unforgivable. In a fit of rage, I took action that led us both to lose everything and fall into despair. My name is Jane, 33 years old. I married Mark, who's 2 years older than me, 3 years ago, and now we live together. Ever since I was young, I dreamed of being a homemaker once I got married. However, after graduating from college and joining a company with supportive supervisors and adorable, honest colleagues, I found the work environment comfortable and fulfilling. So even after marriage, I continued to work full-time. Mark was supportive of my career.
Let's both do household chores whenever we can, okay?
He was very cooperative in the beginning. Yes, in the beginning. Mark had lived with his parents until we got married. He had no experience living alone and absolutely no skills in doing household chores. When he vacuumed, he'd bump into the trash can, spilling its contents. If he did laundry, he'd use too much detergent, causing foam to overflow. And when washing dishes, it was more common for plates to remain unbroken than not. His cooking attempts were so hazardous, I couldn't even watch. At first, I tried teaching him and working together, but I had a job too. Leaving chores to Mark often meant they took longer, so I ended up doing them myself more often than not. Each time, Mark would have this apologetic look on his face, but still,
I'm sorry, thank you,
he would say. I don't even remember when it became the norm, but now cleaning, laundry, dishwashing, and cooking, all these tasks fell on me. The only thing left for Mark was taking out the trash, and even then, I was the one who had to gather it. Despite working full-time, sometimes I just couldn't manage everything. But whenever I asked Mark for help, he would visibly show his displeasure.
You do everything faster than I would.
But you can at least help by putting away the laundry, right? Today, after a whole day of work, I came home to find Mark lounging on the sofa, watching TV. Our workplaces have similar leaving times, but his is closer to home, so he usually gets back before me. The laundry I hung out in the morning was still out there, and the breakfast dishes were left in the sink. I had no time to clean them this morning, and it seemed Mark hadn't even noticed. First, I dealt with the dishes, then started preparing dinner. All this time, Mark just watched TV. That's why I asked him to help with the laundry, but he didn't want to. Taking the clothes off the hangers and folding them, such a simple task. Yet he said he couldn't do it. Or rather, he didn't want to because it was a hassle.
I don't know all the specifics about how you fold clothes.
I can teach you, and it's not a big deal anyway. As long as they're properly stored in the closet, I'm fine with anything.
I had a ton of tasks at work today. Really tired, you know. Normally it's no big deal, but today I'm just especially exhausted.
It's okay, I'll do it.
Really? Well, I think it's faster if you do it.
Saying this, Mark turned his attention back to the TV. And here I am, tired from a busy day at work. Now Mark doesn't even bother to say sorry or thank you anymore. What happened to our initial promise of sharing household chores? Even if it means a greater burden on me, isn't it reasonable to at least want some words of gratitude? Sighing quietly, I continued preparing dinner in a resigned manner. Mark's attitude seems to be getting worse day by day. Not doing any housework seems a given to him now, and he's been going out alone more often on his days off. Whenever I suggest that we should go out just the two of us,
I've already made plans to go golfing with my boss that day.
Or
a colleague wants to discuss some work stuff,
are the typical responses, with his schedule always seeming to be full. Mark, at 35, and without any particular position, honestly doesn't make a very good salary. I accidentally saw his payslip once, and it was considerably less than mine. But the fact that he's often invited out by his boss and colleagues probably means he's well regarded. I understand the importance of networking and relationships in a job. That's why when he uses these as reasons, it's hard for me to ask him to prioritize me. And I don't have the courage to quit my job and become a full-time homemaker to make time for us. In the midst of all this, 3 years of our marriage have passed. I've always wanted children soon after getting married. My feelings haven't changed, and even after marrying Mark, I brought up the topic of having children several times. However, Mark expressed that he still values our time together and wasn't very enthusiastic about actively trying for a baby. While Mark had expressed the desire to cherish our time together,
It seemed contradictory when he often spent his holidays going out alone, which left me feeling confused and disappointed. I decided to approach the topic of having children sooner, but Mark's response was evasive, leaving me unsure about his true intentions. Maybe he doesn't really like kids. This thought made me feel a bit down. But I know that a change of scenery is important during such times. I was thinking of maybe going to see a movie when I received a message. It was from my older sister, Emma, 2 years my senior. She wanted to meet and talk about something. Thinking that meeting my sister after so long would be refreshing, I readily agreed. The next day, we arranged to meet at a cafe near the station. Emma arrived a little later than the planned time, and she took a seat in front of me. "Sorry I'm late. It's been a while. How have you been?" "I'm good. And you?" "I'm doing well, too." Saying that, Emma laughed and said, "Sorry for calling you out of the blue today," Emma said. She furrowed her eyebrows and continued, "No, I'm happy to see you, too, after a while. Actually, there's something I need to tell you about Jane." "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." "What?" I exclaimed so loudly that I quickly covered my mouth with both hands, remembering that we were in a cafe. Emma laughed at my reaction. "You're too surprised." She laughed and said, "Well, of course I am. Wait, you had a boyfriend? I had no idea." As I muttered this, Emma's expression turned slightly troubled. "Actually, I'm not married yet." "What?" "There are some complications with the father." Emma said this with a disheartened slump of her shoulders. Emma has always been somewhat of a local beauty, well known around town. In contrast, I was the sporty type, always with a short haircut, actively running around the playground with boys. She was the dainty one, with her pale skin and fragile figure, looking adorable in a white dress. Now, she was working as a temp, moving between various jobs. She used to laugh off not becoming a full-time employee, saying it was to avoid workplace romances and the drama they bring. Maybe it had something to do with that. "But you're happy about the baby, right?" Tentatively, I asked her, and Emma laughed, nodding. "Of course." I nodded in response. It was unclear what the exact situation was, but Emma seemed to have decided to become a single mother. "Jane, will you support me?" Regardless of the circumstances, if Emma wanted this child, there was only one thing I could say. "Of course I will. Congratulations." Emma smiled with relief when I said this. "I hope you'll have a baby soon, too, Jane." I was struggling with that very issue, but I couldn't bring myself to say that to Emma, who looked so happy. "Yeah, hopefully." I just smiled vaguely and said. When I got home that day, I immediately told Mark about Emma. "My sister is pregnant." "Oh, really? We'll have to bring a gift when the baby's born."
I had thought this was big news, but Mark's reaction was more nonchalant than I expected. He must know that Emma isn't married yet, but he didn't seem interested in asking about the father or anything else. Maybe he really isn't interested in kids. Unable to talk to Emma about it either, the unease inside me only grew. Time passed, and then I received a message from Emma. "The baby was born safely." When I told Mark, his response was just as simple as before. She mentioned that she had received a message.
"Oh, is that so?"
It was just a simple message, she said. Thinking that maybe seeing the baby would make him want one too, I suggested. "Shouldn't we visit my sister to see how she's doing?" I asked. "She's going to be in the hospital for a while longer, and I'd love to see the baby soon and bring a gift for the birth."
"Ah, right. I can make it this Saturday."
"Really? I'll let my sister know." So, after getting Emma's okay, Mark and I planned to visit her on Saturday with a gift to celebrate the birth. The next day, as I was about to search for gift ideas on my phone, I realized the battery was dead. My laptop was left at work,
so I decided to use Mark's computer, which was in the bedroom. I thought about asking Mark first, but he seemed to be dozing off on the sofa while watching TV. Figuring it was just a quick search, I went straight to the bedroom. When I turned on the computer, something surprising caught my eye. An app must have been set to auto-start because without touching anything, a folder of messages popped open. What I saw was the latest exchange of messages. All of them between Emma and Mark. What? Why? It was natural for Emma and Mark to have contact, since she's my sister and he's my husband. But why were they communicating so frequently? Curious, I opened the latest exchange to read it.
Congratulations on the birth. Really sorry I couldn't be there. So I'm a dad now, huh?
Thank you. The baby came out more easily than I thought. I can't wait for you, his dad, to meet him. What is this? I couldn't believe it. It made no sense. Sorry, I couldn't be there. I'm a dad now? In this context, it seems like Emma's child may appear to be Mark's child. Frantically, I scrolled through their previous messages. Told Jane about the pregnancy today.
That's so mean.
That was the day Emma told me she was pregnant. I'm pregnant, probably from when we met last time.
Really? That's amazing. So happy.
And this message, probably from when Emma found out she was pregnant.
I'll come over today, too. Told Jane I have golf with my boss.
Okay, how about we try that restaurant we talked about last time? As I scrolled further back, the messages between my sister and my husband were too intimate to be just between in-laws. Their relationship seemed to have started soon after Mark and I got married. I felt a mix of rage and despair trembling in my hands. I can't believe this. Somehow I managed to think clearly about what needed to be done next. I made sure to leave Mark's computer as it was so he wouldn't know I had used it. Returning to the living room, I found Mark sleeping soundly, snoring carelessly, clenching my fists tightly. I will never forgive this, I muttered quietly to myself as I hatched a plan. Then came Saturday. Mark and I went to the hospital where Emma was staying. She looked surprisingly well. She had an easy delivery, didn't she? Trying hard to keep up a smile. Despite feeling bitter, I managed to appear cheerful. In Emma's arms, the newborn baby slept peacefully. The child was innocent in all this. That's why even the baby's adorableness felt hateful to me. I glanced at Mark. Seeing him looking at the baby so happily, I was filled with rage.
The baby's cute, isn't he?
Mark murmured affectionately. Yeah, he looked just like you.
What?
What? Mark and Emma froze. I sneered. And at the words I muttered, both of them suddenly changed their expressions. You thought I didn't know anything. Upon hearing that, Emma said, What do you mean? Emma tilted her head in an exaggerated manner. About the two of you having an affair, and about who the baby's real father is. At my words, Mark,
What are you talking about?
Raised his voice.
Emma just gave birth. Don't stress her out with your baseless accusations.
It's not just an accusation. I have all the evidence. Saying this, I threw an envelope at Mark. He caught it looking surprised and checked the contents. Inside were excerpts of messages between Mark and Emma that suggested their affair. I had copied the data from Mark's computer to mine and reread everything.
You snooped through my computer.
I just wanted to find a gift for my sister's baby. Your computer wasn't password protected, and the messages just popped up automatically, didn't they? As I said this, Emma clicked her tongue in disbelief at Mark's careless handling of the situation. The messages revealed that their relationship began when Mark visited my family home for a family meeting. He met Emma there and fell for her at first sight. However, being on the verge of marrying me, Mark couldn't do anything. So he married me, but his feelings for Emma never faded. Then, coincidentally, Emma joined Mark's company as a temp worker, though it was only for 6 months. It was more than enough time for them to grow closer. All the excuses Mark used, like playing golf with his boss or discussing work with colleagues, were lies to cover up his meetings with Emma. Eventually, they became intimate. I didn't want it, but Mark forced me.
What?
As I summarized what I had learned from the messages, Emma suddenly started playing the victim. But the baby is innocent. I decided to have the baby, that's all.
What nonsense are you sprouting? It was probably you who seduced me in the first place.
That is not true, right, Jane? You believe me, don't you? Emma looked at me desperately. I stated clearly, of course I don't believe you. During my student days, I often confided in Emma about my romantic relationships. Whenever I had a boyfriend, Emma seemed happy for me as if it were her own happiness. However, my relationships never lasted long. That's because whenever I introduced my boyfriends to Emma, almost without fail, they ended up liking her. Some were honest enough to break up with me because they had fallen for Emma, while others tried to use me to get closer to her. Each time, Emma would apologize with a sorry look, but of course it wasn't her fault. During a time when I was struggling with various things like feeling unattractive or worrying that Emma might not like me enough, I met Mark. Even when Mark met Emma, he always only said,
Your sister is beautiful.
But his behavior towards me didn't change at all. That's why I married Mark. I thought he was the one who wouldn't be distracted by Emma and only had eyes for me. However, the reality was that we didn't meet Emma until we reached a point of no return, and that's the only reason we made it to marriage. In fact, I was happier during my student days when I could believe in Emma's kindness. You were intentionally stealing my boyfriends, weren't you? I never did such a thing. It's all written here. Saying this, I thrust the printouts of the messages between Emma and Mark at her. I've always taken all of Jane's boyfriends.
That's a terrible hobby.
And then Jane would come to me for relationship advice. Every time I comforted her, it really boosted my self-esteem. Couldn't stop doing it. That was the truth. Emma had intentionally taken my boyfriends and found satisfaction in consoling me afterward. I thought she was a reliable big sister. Someone I could share my joys and sorrows with. Then I handed Mark the divorce papers. My name's already on it. You just need to sign it and submit.
Wait, Jane.
You'll pay a hefty compensation, and Emma will too. What? But I just had a baby. That's not my problem. I've already told everything to our parents. Dad and Mom say they're cutting ties with you. Wait a minute. If you do that, they'll never see their grandchild. Even if you divorce Mark, who would marry someone unattractive and divorced like you? They are both putting me first. They said I don't have to force myself. Right now, they'd rather not see the face of their daughter, who committed adultery, than miss seeing their grandchild. Emma looked frustrated at my words. Then she exclaimed, That's it. She looked at Mark and said, Hey, this child's father is you, so you'll be contributing to child support, right? That's what we agreed on from the start. In response to Emma's words, Mark fell silent. And it's understandable why. With Mark's meager salary, if he had to pay compensation to me, he probably couldn't afford child support. He must have assumed that as long as this affair remained hidden, he could rely on my income for living expenses. But now he faced both compensation and child support, a real double whammy. That would certainly leave someone speechless. From now on, I'll have my lawyer handle everything.
This is ridiculous.
As I tried to leave, Mark shouted like this and began tearing up copies of the messages. Of course, even if he did such a thing, the data is still on my computer, and I've already submitted it as evidence to the lawyer. By now, they're probably verifying the authenticity of whether the messages were really exchanged between their computers. Well, judging by the reactions of these two, it doesn't seem to be impersonation or scam emails, but who knows for sure. Afterward, I officially divorced Mark. When I returned to my parents' house, they cried. To my parents, Emma was still their beloved daughter. And of course, she was my cherished sister too. I never imagined she would manipulate things like this. Through my lawyer, my parents declared estrangement from Emma. It seemed like she was trying to use her child as a shield to rely on my parents, but my parents absolutely refused to accept that. I had thought it would be fine if Emma and Mark got married, but it seems that didn't happen. It appears that Mark, with his pride, couldn't forgive Emma for trying to shift all the blame onto him when she was caught by me. In the end, Emma couldn't raise the baby on her own and had to temporarily place the child in a facility. Mark's affair with his wife's sister had caused rumors to circulate within the company, making it uncomfortable for him to continue working there. As a result, he decided to resign. Despite Mark's attempts to reconcile, I naturally couldn't accept it. In fact, I obtained a restraining order through the police to ensure that I wouldn't have to see Mark again. With the restraining order in place, I knew that I wouldn't have to see Mark's face ever again. On the other hand, I became even more dedicated to my work. Initially, there were many concerns, but as I threw myself into my job, my colleagues saw my determination, and it boosted morale. It seems our sales have significantly increased. I'm done with marriage, but happiness isn't just about that. I'm committed to a fulfilling job. I have a trustworthy boss, reliable colleagues, and kind parents. Right now, I feel more than content. I hope these peaceful days continue. My name is Cecile. Just the other day, my elementary school-age daughter surprised me by asking, "Mom, can you teach me how to do makeup?" I'm 39. Girls these days seem so mature for their age. Now that I think about it, as a little girl, I was thrilled with inexpensive candies that came with pretty toy necklaces or lipsticks from capsule toy machines. It feels like just a moment ago I was changing her diapers, and now she's on her way to becoming a beautiful young lady. Oops, almost brought myself to tears. Today, I'm going to talk about back when I was a bit more of a beauty myself. Please listen if you'd like. This was about 8 years ago. I had just finished a month-long stay at my parents' home in preparation for giving birth, and returned to the home where I lived with my husband Tommy, baby in arms. I thought we were starting our happy life as a family of 3, but it turned out to be a family of 4. Yes, for some reason, my mother-in-law Melinda, who was supposed to be at her own house, was there to greet me. I was told, "I thought my son wouldn't manage on his own, so I moved in to help." Well, maybe a man alone would struggle with daily life? Not being there, I thought, maybe that's just how it is, and thanked Melinda for taking care of my husband. She seemed quite pleased, saying, "I'm honored to have been of help." And as I entered the house, everything was neat and the air was clear. Perhaps it was good she lived with us. But then a problem arose. My overseas brand wedding ring, which I had to remove and store away because it no longer fit during pregnancy, was nowhere to be found. It was supposed to be in the bedroom drawer. Where's the ring? My overseas brand, where did it go? I searched everywhere, only to find something even stranger. My overseas brand bag was missing. The bag I had saved up for and bought with much effort before I was married. Wait a minute. Even the shoes from an overseas brand I splurged on as a birthday gift to myself were missing. Now the ring is one thing, but it's really strange for such large items to disappear. After all, I only use them on special occasions and hardly ever move them from their storage. Feeling something was off, I hurried back to the living room and asked Melinda, "Melinda, did you tidy up the bedroom closet?" "What's the rush? I haven't touched the bedroom," she replied. If Melinda didn't tidy up, then it must have been stolen, right? So have you noticed anything missing? Was there anything unusual while I was away? I asked. However, both my husband and Melinda, avoiding eye contact, denied anything was amiss. "Nothing happened, right, Mom?" "Yes, it was all normal." I told the two, who were speaking so strangely. "My wedding ring?
Brand name bag and shoes are missing. My bedroom was burglarized. Melinda, surprised, asked, "Are you sure you looked everywhere?" In my panic, I could only nod at Melinda while frantically calling the police on my mobile phone. "Hello, is this the police? I've been burglarized. The situation and address? What are you calling the police for?" Melinda shouted at me, clearly upset by the police's questions. Caught off guard by her scolding, I froze, staring blankly. The woman on the phone kept asking, "What's going on?" "Oh, sorry. You needed the situation and address, right?" While feeling Melinda's disgruntled gaze, I relayed the details to the police. In less than 10 minutes, 2 police officers arrived at our home. They wanted to see the room where the theft occurred. However, Melinda kept insisting, "It's a misunderstanding. Please leave." Even if it were a misunderstanding, things were indeed missing. Both supposed to be victims in the house. I went pale at the thought of strangers entering our home. While Melinda was red-faced, angrily saying, "We don't need the police." Even my husband was trying to calm me down, saying, "It's just a ring or two. It's fine." "Just a ring or two? That's our treasured ring we bought together. It's irreplaceable," I retorted, while the police officer watched me intently. "All right, ma'am. Could you please show me the room? Your husband and mother-in-law can stay in the living room. We'll talk to them." With that, the older police officer asked the younger one to handle my husband and Melinda, while guiding me to the bedroom. Melinda was still furiously saying, "Don't just go looking around someone's house." After all, this house, though in my husband's name, is also my home. By that logic, Melinda could have been told the same thing about intruding in someone's house. Of course, Melinda didn't seem to realize that. Confused by their behavior, the older officer asked me, "Have you been living with your mother-in-law all this time?" "No, I went back to my parents' home for childbirth. I just returned today and found out Melinda had been living here while I was gone." Did your husband ever discuss letting his mother stay here with you?" "No, I didn't agree to that." "I see. Before you went to your parents, were the missing items here?" "They were. I don't have proof of the ring and bag, but I have a photo of the shoes. I was thinking of selling them secondhand. See, the save date on the data is exactly a month ago."
"Right, so it must have been lost after you went to your parents' house,"
the police officer said, narrowing his eyes as if piecing something together.
"Let's take a look at the room,"
he suggested. I led the officer to the bedroom and explained again where the missing items had been stored. While complying with the fingerprint collection, the officer asked,
"What's that?"
He pointed to a handkerchief on the shelf. Unfamiliar to me. It wasn't mine or my husband's. I thought, that shelf is where we keep our favorite photos and paintings, and my husband knows I always keep it tidy. I've never seen this handkerchief placed there. I don't know, I'm sorry, I didn't notice it until you mentioned it. It wasn't there before I went to my parents' house. Missing valuables, yet unfamiliar items appearing? If this isn't creepy, what is? Feeling frightened, the officer asked,
"May I check this a bit more?"
I answered, "Please do."
This has a camera hidden in it."
"What?" Surprised, I watched as the officer unfolded the handkerchief on his palm, revealing a small camera tucked inside. "For what? Espionage?"
Let's look around the room a bit more."
The officer, calm amidst my confusion, checked other drawers, different from where the missing items were stored.
"Ah, found it."
He pulled out a cable from a drawer near my husband's side of the bed. The cable fit the small camera he had found earlier.
"The mother's behavior is a bit suspicious, but the husband seems fishy too,"
the officer said with a wry smile. I was unable to grasp the situation and asked, "What do you mean?"
"Your husband might have installed this camera. We found a cable for playback,"
he explained. "What? For what purpose?" I'd like to check the video. Can I use that computer? He asked, pointing to my husband's laptop. Confused yet hoping to uncover the truth, I agreed. Sure, go ahead. The officer connected the camera to the laptop with practiced ease. The laptop seemed to recognize the camera, and a menu opened up. The officer selected some command and chose a random file from a folder. To our shock, the video displayed our bedroom. I went with the officer to the living room where my husband and Melinda were waiting. Melinda immediately complained. Really now, you're making a fuss and calling the police. We had to undergo questioning. Felt like criminals. It's so upsetting. My husband, too, was in a foul mood. Making a big deal out of nothing. Enough. Whose fault is this? In anger, I slammed my hand on the living room table. I'm still recovering from giving birth, and they made me run around and panic like this. I was seething. How dare you act so brazenly after what you've done? I know everything now. Look at this. I took the laptop from the officer, opened the screen, and played the video we'd just seen. My husband and Melinda gasped. Huh? As they saw themselves on screen, rummaging through the bedroom shelves, taking my ring and bag and leaving. In the video, my husband was telling Melinda, with the money from selling these, we can both have some fun. Melinda was laughing. Who would have thought she had such sellable items? It's hard to prosecute family living together for theft, she said. Mom, you're amazing. So knowledgeable. So shameless. Even when their misdeeds were pointed out, not only did they not feel guilty, but their conversation suggested they were proud of their cunning. I thought I was targeted because I happened to have brand name items. But who would have guessed the culprits were inside the house? My agitation and anger grew. While my husband looked scared, Melinda still didn't think she did anything wrong. In fact, she kept denying it, despite being clearly seen in the video. Okay, since you insist, let's watch this, I said, playing a different video. Oh, come on. What about your wife? If that's the case, aren't you okay with your husband? On the screen, Melinda was intimately engaged with a much younger man, maybe in his 30s, on a bed. It's okay. I only need you, Rocky. My husband is nothing to me. I'm so happy, but you know my wife has been cutting my allowance again. Again? What an incapable wife. Don't worry, I'll give you some money. Melinda then wrapped her arms around the young man's neck, embracing him. It was as if she was trying to absorb the youthfulness from the younger man. Though I hadn't seen it before, it looked like something straight out of a club scene. Thank you, Melinda. I love you. You're so sweet. Seeing the video of Melinda's alluring voice and actions, even my husband couldn't help but look away. The young officer looked queasy, as if he was about to say, ew. And the older officer quietly scolded him. Hey, stop it. Don't show such nonsense, Melinda yelled, her face turning bright red. My husband, perhaps feeling it was none of his concern, seemed about to laugh at Melinda's losing her usual composure. Really, Tommy? You think it's funny? Huh? Please, watch this too. I played another video. I love Nancy the most. Then another. I've never loved anyone but Anna. Just kidding. How was it? Good? And another. Ashley, stroke my head. Hearing this, the young police officer burst into laughter beyond control. While the older one scolded him again. In the video, Ashley was stroking my husband's head, asking, How many others are you seeing? My husband responded like a script. Only you, Ashley. Liar. At this point in the video, there were already 3 women, and including those I just checked, at least 8. Really? I love you, Tommy. So, about that. I know. You mean the bag, right? Don't worry. I make good money. I'll get you a gift.
Yay! This pattern repeated with the other women. Apparently, my husband had been leading a life where he gave women gifts in exchange for letting him secretly film their encounters. What a hobby. You might have noticed he's making a huge loss buying brand name items for each video. And the only video showing Melinda's actions was that one. It seems the recording button was accidentally left on, capturing the moment Melinda stole my things and her own actions. Rest assured, it's not some peculiar hobby to watch Melinda's actions. Or maybe not. Melinda and my husband, embarrassed and exposed even to the police, were pale and slumped in defeat. But it wasn't over yet. Just as I thought this, the intercom rang. "They're here," I said. Melinda looked at me with a tired face. Ignoring her gaze, I went to the entrance and welcomed Bruce. Seeing Bruce, Melinda lost her words and screamed, "Ah! Ah!"
Seems like you were cheating in your son's house, huh? Cecile told me.
No, it's not like that.
What do you mean it's not? Cecile, could you play the video?
With pleasure. After casting a cold glance at the bewildered Melinda, Bruce burst into loud laughter as he watched her flirtatious video.
An old woman like this, seducing a young man for money? Aren't you ashamed? Oh, my stomach hurts from laughing.
What? I thought Bruce would be shocked by the video, but his unexpected reaction surprised me.
You're just a wallet to him, clearly after your money. Pathetic.
Bruce laughed uproariously, clapping his hands. Melinda, embarrassed, blushed furiously, her previously defiant attitude gone.
That was funny. Let's see my son's too. Let's see how much he's grown.
Bruce said, laughing while focusing on a particular part of my husband in the video. After watching all the infidelity videos, Bruce commented with a straight face,
Both mother and son, letting young people take their money. Beyond disappointing, it's pitiful.
Needless to say, Melinda and my husband would have preferred being laughed at. What we learned from my questioning was that Melinda accidentally found out about my husband's affairs. She kept it secret in exchange for using our house to meet her own lover. For Melinda, it was embarrassing to be seen with a much younger man, and her lover, lacking money and having a wife, couldn't easily find places to meet. For my husband, having the freedom to invite girls he met online without going out was cheaper and much more convenient. Thus Melinda and my husband, keeping each other's affairs secret, turned this house into their paradise of indulgence, becoming accomplices. Their arrangement worked by one leaving the house while the other one met their lover. Melinda never imagined the videos would be accidentally recorded.
"I'm sorry, Cecile. Bruce, I'll return the money. Do anything, please. Forgive me."
Me too, Cecile. I'll change. Do anything. Please forgive me.
Melinda and my husband begged, bowing their heads. Bruce and I exchanged glances and laughed. "You'll do anything, right?"
Indeed, anything.
They both answered.
Of course.
"Of course."
To our question. "Then let's divorce."
"What?"
What?
Our simultaneous declaration to divorce left my husband and Melinda in shock.
You said you'd do anything, right? Let's get a divorce.
"No, wait. Anything but that, please."
No way.
Bruce, without hesitation, refused Melinda's desperate pleas and deep apologies. The divorce was not retracted. My husband, too, was crying and deeply apologizing, but I did not withdraw the divorce either. Thus, only hours after returning from my parents' home post-childbirth, my divorce was decided upon under police supervision. Later, I had my husband pay me the same amount as the sold items as compensation in the divorce trial.
Additionally, I demanded double the standard amount for alimony and compensation for infidelity. Why double? I slightly intimidated them by saying, "You know your mistresses seem to be married. I could inform their spouses." This was mainly a bluff, as I didn't even know their names at the time. And it's like I noticed that they're married because of the ring in the video. The threat was effective immediately, given the number of mistresses involved. My husband, terrified at the thought of being sued by each spouse, agreed to pay double the standard amount. Meanwhile, Bruce furiously obtained the lover's contact details from a crying Melinda and called him over. He informed the lover and his wife of the affair, leading to their divorce too. Both spouses demanded compensation from their cheating partners in the divorce trials. Though I promised not to inform the mistress's spouses, I never said I wouldn't demand compensation from the mistresses themselves. After extracting all the communication from my husband's smartphone, I contacted each woman to claim compensation for the affair, which they agreed to pay. Secretly, I was glad my husband had had so many mistresses. It turned out to be quite profitable. But as a single mother without a steady job, I knew I could never have too much money. Turning the harm I suffered into financial compensation didn't erase the damage done. So, with a substantial sum of money, I divorced my husband. 8 years have passed since then. Eventually, my husband ended up paying compensation to his mistress's spouses too. Their husbands, noticing their wives suddenly had a lot of money, grew suspicious. This led to the discovery of the affairs, resulting in some divorces. My husband, now overwhelmed with debt from the numerous compensations, was offered help by a certain woman. A goddess descended, he must have thought. But alas, this woman turned out to be a bad one. He thought they were close to marriage, only to find out she was already engaged to another man. My husband had spent what little money he had on a ring and dates for her, only to end up with a big loss and a broken heart. He never learns. Of course, I can't muster any sympathy for him. Melinda, having proposed marriage to her affair partner after her divorce, was spectacularly rejected. Still, she didn't give up, repeatedly ambushing him on his commute, until she was cautioned under a public nuisance ordinance. Of course, naturally, that was the end of her relationship with her lover, who, as Bruce said, had only seen her as a wallet from the start. Well, everyone should be able to see it. Melinda was the only one who hadn't realized she was being used. It's a laughable tale. As for Bruce, after separating from Melinda and becoming estranged from his son, I worried about him being alone. But it seems the compensation money from the divorce trial sparked an interest in bonsai. Now he's happily involved in a circle with people who share his hobby. That's a relief. Though I didn't expect it, I looked him up, and sure enough, he'd even set up an SNS account. I've discreetly followed you, father-in-law. And me, honestly, fed up with men, marriage, no more, and still going strong as a single mother. I relied on my parents until my child was old enough for daycare, then started job hunting. Juggling child rearing, it took about a year, but I found a great company that's understanding of single mothers. There are others like me there, so although we sometimes work late, we're usually allowed to leave on time. I used to think single mothers had to work nonstop, but with proper allowances and just my daughter to care for, we live quite normally without extravagant luxuries. There's talk of a promotion when my child reaches middle school. I haven't decided yet, but I want to consider what will make my daughter happiest and my parents too. Despite everything, the joy comes from meals shared with my daughter and sometimes my parents. Oh, I did well to leave that man. Serves him right. He never even got to be called Dad by my adorable daughter. My marriage ended in a crazy way, but as a parent, I still hope my daughter finds a good person and has a happy marriage. Until the day she brings home a wonderful man, I'll do my best as a mother. So, off to work again today.
I think you should divorce Dad now. My daughter blurted out something strange. Because my daughter came to me in the early morning saying she wanted me to divorce her father, Why would she say something even adults hesitate to speak about? Tell me more about what you mean, I asked her, and she said,
I know Dad's trying to say goodbye to you, Mom.
Goodbye? Is that really true?
That's why we have to hurry.
I don't doubt my daughter's words, but it's hard to believe that my husband would think such a thing. But my daughter's eyes are looking straight into mine. It's a seriousness that seems beyond her 5 years. This intense gaze of hers doesn't seem like a lie at all. All right, Sarah, let's get ready right away. With that, we quickly packed our things and left the house. My name is Maria. I live with my husband John and our 5-year-old daughter Sarah. We met in college, and I married him when I graduated. I planned to support him as a housewife, but as his job didn't go as planned, I had to work too, and I got a job at a local company. However, I became pregnant the following year and decided to quit after discussing our future with my husband. Then, our daughter was born the next year, and I planned to focus on childcare and housework. But things didn't go smoothly. The cause was my husband. He got a job at a major company after graduating, but couldn't fit in due to his quiet nature and ineptitude, and quickly resigned. After that, he hopped from job to job until he found his current one 4 years ago. He's been at his job for 4 years and seems to think we're financially secure, but honestly, we're not. His salary barely covers our future needs. I'm home. Welcome back. Here's this month's money. When my husband returned home from work, he handed me this month's living expenses as soon as he saw me. Thank you. At those words, he smiled happily and went to the back room to change out of his suit. I sighed as I watched him walk away. It's appreciated, but... I gave a wry smile as I looked at the money he gave me. We have a 5-year-old daughter. She needs a lot of care and money. And the cost of living for 3 of us is incomparable to when it was just the 2 of us. So of course it helps to have a bit more money. But there's a limit. The living expenses my husband brings are always $200. Honestly, it's not enough. I wish he could give a little more, but it's too harsh to say that to him. Despite being a full-time employee, my husband's take-home pay is just $1,000. It's such a low salary that I worry about the company's stability. Knowing this, I can't bring myself to ask him for more. And then there's his smile. That makes it even harder to speak up. But there's another reason I keep silent. I once mentioned needing more for living expenses, and his reaction was intense. Do you expect me to come up with more? Do you know how hard I'm working for such a small salary? I was just trying to discuss our increasingly difficult life since our daughter's birth, but he erupted in anger. I should have considered his situation, but I was overwhelmed with childcare and had no room to consider his feelings. Then at least consider finding a job that pays better. Shut up. My current job suits me. Don't butt in when you're not even working. I'm sorry. My husband is generally quiet, so people think he's mild-mannered. But that's only outside. At home, he acts like he's in charge, and gets angry at the slightest provocation. That has become a sort of trauma for me, making me cautious about how I speak to him. That's when it happened.
Mom, are you okay?
I'm fine. Thank you for worrying, Sarah. I work from home, but struggle to find enough time between caring for our daughter and household chores, so I don't earn much. But my little angel soothes my weary heart.
Mom, I'll be good, so work hard, okay?
She said, holding a cup full of orange juice in her tiny hands. Thank you, Sarah. After I finish work, let's go shopping. My daughter's sweet smile is precious. I'm determined not to let her suffer. If I'm not earning enough, I just have to work harder. With her help, I've been more focused on my work. Then one day... I'm home, Sarah. I bought a toy for you. Look, the one you wanted. It was the first time my husband had bought a toy for her. But when he showed it to our daughter...
Mom already bought this for me, see?
She said. Her words seemed to ignite something in him, and he snatched the toy from her and threw it at her with force. Fortunately, it didn't hit her, but the fear of what could have happened sent chills down my spine. What are you doing? Shut up. As we argued, our daughter burst into tears. Irritated by her crying, my husband grabbed her and raised his right arm. I quickly covered her with my body, fearing the worst. "Move!" "No!" He swung his raised arm down towards my face. A dull sound echoed in the room. Then he went to the back room as if nothing happened, changed into his clothes, and left the house. Left behind, I hugged my daughter tightly. "Sarah, are you okay?" She wasn't crying like before, but she trembled in my arms, clearly terrified by the sight of her father she had never seen before. Once she calmed down, I went to the bathroom. I've got a bruise now. It's clearly visible, but thankfully not severe enough to need a hospital. But I can't understand why my husband was so angry. Could it be that he didn't like that I bought our daughter a toy? Or was it that it was the same toy? Regardless, the distrust I feel towards him after such an incident isn't easily dismissed. The thought of something like this happening again is unbearable. 2 hours later, he returned home. Despite making eye contact, he didn't say a word and headed straight to the bedroom with his pajamas, then to the bathroom. After his bath, he went to bed immediately. The fear of what might happen lingered, but he fell asleep quickly, so I decided to sleep in the living room with my daughter. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the door closing as he left for work. The events of the previous day came flooding back, and I sighed. Beside me, my daughter was sleeping peacefully. I stroked her gently, hoping for a day without incident. 3 months have passed since that incident, and life has continued without further trouble. My husband has been working hard, and I've been balancing household duties, caring for our daughter, and my work from home.
"I'm home. I brought some cake from a popular bakery today. Here, eat up."
Thanks, Dad. Where's mine?
"Sorry, nothing for Sarah today. It's just for Mom. I'll get you something next time. Forgive me."
Since that day, my husband seems like a changed man. The once quiet man outside is now more talkative and has shed his overbearing nature at home, being kinder to both me and our daughter. Perhaps that incident changed his perspective. Yet one thing still bothers me. It's the moment he gives me the monthly living expenses. His salary remains meager, yet he now gives all of it to me as living expenses.
"Here's this month's. It's not much, but it should be enough, right?"
Wait, all of it again? We don't need this much. What I earn from home is enough to cover the shortfall.
"True, but remember, I'm the head of the family. Isn't it a problem if I only contribute $200 to the living expenses? People would laugh if they knew."
It feels unsettling. Though he has changed, it's like he's become a different person entirely. At that moment, a vague sense of unease washed over me. Then,
Hey, Dad, let's take a bath together.
"It's been a while. Okay, let's do that today."
in her hands, she held my husband's pajamas. It was a scene I hadn't seen in a while. They used to take baths together every day, but since the incident, my daughter had been keeping her distance. Of course, they had stopped taking baths together. It was a surprise when she suggested they bathe together, as she had been avoiding him. As they headed to the bathroom, my daughter glanced back at me for a moment. Her eyes seemed to be pleading for something. 10 minutes later, she came out first. And then she told me my husband would be going on a business trip.
Mom, Dad says he's going on a business trip starting tomorrow.
A business trip? I haven't heard anything about that. Usually he would tell me about his trips in advance, but this time he didn't. After he got out of the bath, I asked him about the business trip.
It was decided suddenly.
Suddenly? When? Where are you going?
A far place. This trip is important and confidential.
I've never heard of a trip that needed to be kept secret. Despite my growing suspicion of his evasive answers, he went to bed. The next day, I woke up to noises from the living room. When I peeked into the living room...
Sorry, did I wake you?
He was getting ready to leave for his trip. You're leaving now?
I have to start working as soon as I get there. Thought I'd go early to be safe.
Being early is good, but it's still 5 a.m. You're leaving this early?
I'm just a low-ranking guy. Need to make a good impression.
With that, he left for his business trip. His actions felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That's when my daughter suddenly woke up and said,
Let's divorce Dad now.
I was startled, because she woke up so early in the morning, saying she wanted a divorce from my husband. Why would my daughter say such a thing that even adults would hesitate to utter? Tell me more about what you mean. I asked her, and she said,
Dad is trying to say goodbye to you, Mom.
Goodbye? Is that really true?
Yes, that's why we have to hurry.
I don't doubt what my daughter says, but it's hard to believe that my husband would consider such a thing. Yet my daughter's eyes are looking straight at me. They are far too serious for a 5-year-old. Such a young yet strong gaze doesn't seem to be lying. All right, Sarah, let's get ready right away. We quickly packed and left the house. A few days later, I received a frantic call from my husband.
Where are you? I came back from the trip and no one's home. Your stuff is gone. What's going on?
Welcome back. How was your lonely business trip?
What?
Don't bother lying. I know the trip was a lie. It turned out his business trip was all a fabrication.
What are you talking about? My trip wasn't a lie. If you're so concerned, call the company. That'll clear everything up, whether I'm lying or you're mistaken.
If you insist, maybe I will call them. You think if you say that, I won't call, right? That's why you're so confident. But you're definitely lying. I've already checked with your company. They asked me if I wasn't aware that you've taken 3 days off starting today. A small gasp of surprise came from the other end of the phone. He had claimed it was a business trip, but instead, he had spent those days sleeping in his car, moving around to avoid being seen. Surprised, aren't you? He probably didn't expect me to go to such lengths. Indeed, I used to trust him and wouldn't have thought to verify his business trips with his company. But this time was different, all thanks to our daughter. Sarah told me your trip was a lie.
Sarah, don't be ridiculous. She couldn't possibly know anything about that. You must have put that idea in her head, didn't you?
That's impossible. You know, don't you? Sarah might be only 5, but she's very observant and understands a lot about us. She's aware of what's happening and what's being planned. Despite her age, Sarah has a somewhat mature perspective and awareness, probably influenced by television dramas. She was a fussy baby, and her fussiness persisted longer and more intensely than I'd expected. During those times, I'd calm her with TV dramas. Even as she grew, watching dramas became a norm for us, from the latest to the oldest mysteries. We'd record what we couldn't watch immediately. Her love for dramas had surprised even me, and it's naturally matured her way of thinking and speaking. John, remember you once said you were the head of the family, and it was your duty to protect us. That you knew your family better than anyone.
Yes, that's right. I'm the head of the family, and I know you guys better than anyone else.
Then you must know what I'm about to say, right?
Of course.
Then I won't hold back. I'm divorcing you.
What?
The word divorce stunned him. Of course, he vehemently opposed.
What do you mean, divorce? Why would you say that? What don't you like about me?
It's not about liking or disliking. I'm divorcing you to protect myself before you erase me.
What are you talking about?
He became suddenly quiet. I pressed on, demanding an explanation. You don't understand what I'm saying? Well, let me explain it to you now. It all started when Sarah said she wanted us to divorce. At first I wondered why divorce, but then she mentioned the word goodbye. This is a word my daughter learned from watching TV dramas. She loves all kinds of dramas, especially mystery ones, where there's almost always someone passing away. Watching these, she intuitively understood that causing someone harm, leading them to stop breathing, is a bad thing. Each time such a scene played, she would ask me,
Mom, the old lady said goodbye just before. It was an old man.
Yes, making someone say goodbye like that is what bad people do. So in my daughter's words, saying goodbye means someone stopping to breathe. That's what she meant when she said,
Dad is trying to make Mom say goodbye.
I would never have understood this if I didn't watch dramas with her. If I hadn't spent proper time with her, I wouldn't have realized its significance and would likely been a victim to his plans. Do you really think I would do such a thing? I'm not just thinking. I'm stating the truth. Don't be ridiculous. Why would I need to stop my own wife's breathing? And you, believing a 5-year-old's words and deciding on divorce? Stop making a fool out of me. It seemed like whatever I say is futile. The only way forward is to show irrefutable evidence. If you insist, I will show you proper evidence. Evidence of your attempt to take my life. Evidence? I hung up and sent him images from his email. When he saw them, he called back immediately. Why do you have? What I had sent him was his plan, stored on his mobile, to end my breathing. The plan was written in meticulous detail. It outlined a plan to drug us under the guise of a family drive, pretending to be the first to discover us, making it look like an accidental overdose. Worse yet, the plan involved our daughter, too. The idea of even considering harming his own daughter seemed beyond what a human could conceive. This all came to light thanks to Sarah. Previously, when she had bathed with her father, she came rushing out to me after getting out.
Mom, look at this.
She handed me his mobile. Displayed on the screen was the full extent of his plan, including countless grievances he had against me. Despite being a salaried employee, he was irked by my higher earnings from working at home. It was a blow to his pride as a husband and a man. That pride turned into jealousy, and he began to think that without me, his pride would be preserved. He started researching ways to rid himself of me on the internet. You looked through my phone without permission. I hadn't intended to until Sarah told me to look. Why did my daughter know about such things written on the mobile? It goes back quite a bit. Once, my daughter wanted to watch her favorite TV drama, but her father was watching something else and wouldn't let her, handing her his mobile phone to play games instead. When she opened the phone to play a game, she stumbled upon a screen she'd never seen before. The detailed plan he had made to end my life, mirroring exactly what we had seen on one of those TV dramas. That's how she understood what he was planning and thinking. You shouldn't have snooped around like that. How can you be so selfish? Do you even realize what you were planning to do? No, I mean... I'm so glad I trusted Sarah. Otherwise, by now, Sarah and I would have been... Then he hung up without another word. Immediately after, an email arrived on my phone. Don't think this will just end here. I have my plans, too. 2 hours later, unbelievably, my husband showed up at my parents' house. I knew you'd be here. How did you know I'd be here? It's obvious you'd come here. Your parents' house is the place you'd go. My daughter, trembling with fear, was behind me. Go inside, dear. She nodded and went to the back room. I hadn't expected him to come to my parents' house, but now that he was here, I had to face him with determination. So, what brings you here? Surely you're not here to take us back. That's exactly why I'm here. We're a family. We should be together, right? Together? With someone who was planning to erase me and Sarah? Get real. The argument with my husband continued. Forget about that. I've changed my mind. Let's live happily, together, as a family of 3. That's for your and Sarah's good. An absolute lie. His eyes told the whole story. I've told you before. I'm divorcing you. I've already prepared the divorce papers. Divorce papers, huh? They mean nothing if I don't sign them. That won't be the case. What? I showed him something. What's this? The plan I recorded? What do you want to do with this now? You think you can threaten me with this? I won't divorce you no matter what you do. I won't stoop to threats. That would make me no better than you. What I've done is reported everything to the police, along with all the evidence. The police? Of course. I wouldn't just do nothing while my life is being threatened. At the mention of the police, he lunged at me in a rage. I tried to close the door hastily, but he forcefully stopped it. Don't you dare mess with me. He had transformed into someone else entirely. His anger was ferocious, and I couldn't hold him back. Then I heard my daughter's voice from behind. When I turned around, my daughter Sarah was looking at me, trembling with fear. She was so frightened. "It's okay. Mom will definitely protect you." Saying that, I felt a surge of strength. Perhaps the strength of a mother's will to protect her child. I tried with all my might to close the door against his strength, but his force was beyond imagination. I thought it was all over. At that moment,
"What are you doing?"
with that shout, my husband screamed and was pushed back. Peeking through the slight gap in the front door, I saw.
"Are you okay?"
"Dad!" My father had appeared just in time. "Dad, why are you here? I thought you were on a business trip starting today."
"I forgot something and had to come back to retrieve it."
It was a relief, albeit coincidental, that my father arrived.
"What's all this about?"
Overwhelmed by my father's formidable presence, my husband collapsed to the ground. It's no wonder. My father is tall and quite burly. He was devoted to martial arts in his student days and still frequents the gym. Even in his 60s, he maintains a robust physique. There was no way my husband could stand against him.
"Would you mind explaining why you were here and what you were planning to do to my daughter and granddaughter?"
Unable to bear the situation, my husband tried to leave in tears. But in the next moment, several men apprehended him.
What? What the? Stop it. Let me go."
The police officers subdued my husband and took him away.
"Thank goodness. But what brought John here?"
He probably came for some sort of extreme farewell. Afterwards, my husband was rearrested for attempting to end mine and my daughter's lives, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. During that time, my daughter, my parents, and I moved far away for safety. The divorce, alimony, and property division were all handled by my lawyer, so I wouldn't have to face my husband. Half a year later, I learned from the lawyer that my ex-husband was serving his sentence as a model prisoner. But even after his release, due to his alimony obligations, he would be working at sea and unlikely to lead a stable life for some time. Meanwhile, my daughter and I, along with my parents, are living happily in our new home. Sarah, take this one to Grandpa and Grandma.
Okay,
Be careful not to drop it.
I will.
Our days now are different from before, stress-free and filled with smiles. I wholeheartedly hope these days continue forever.